let's get into this chapter review here. Even Mekamaru was here before Yuki. Crazy that Shoko is in this picture. Yaga is in this picture. What? What? I gotta check. That's crazy. Obviously, despite my gripes with the colored page and who was chosen, I think this small little mission with the three of our trio is fun. I really enjoyed it. It's a nice return to form. It reminds me very much of those last couple moments of Origin of Obedience, where we're able to see how our three sorcerers have grown, and even not too much, right? Like they don't get into a big fight or anything like that, but it's just a nice, fun little gag chapter. Seeing our trio interact as, I would assume, their second year of Jujutsu High, planning and plotting against a curse user who has just this weird, I guess, anime eye transform technique. Megami's a dick. Megami's right back to denouncing Yuji and Nobara, who share one single brain cell, way back to the old days. Nothing new here. And they're easily able to reprimand this curse user in no time. Nobara, who has this really awesome shot here of sliding down the building using her hammer to keep her grounded. That is a really cool moment. Gotta give Nobara that awesome moment. I mean, I will definitely say I missed Nobara as a character. I missed her interactions with the trio. If we were just left with Yuji and Megami at the end of this, I think that would be utterly depressing. You already see Megami and how he interacts with these two characters, how he thinks he's smarter than everybody. He is just calling the shots from the very beginning, telling everyone that their plans are dumb. Bro, you almost just plagued the entire world into chaos. All right, I think you should be having a little bit of a nicer tone to everybody. You know, we could have executed your ass. We lost a lot of good people trying to save you. So Nobara adds to Megami's seriousness because Yuji would not be able to bounce off of Megami enough in like a group setting. Her and Yuji's dynamic really makes for the added levity of the situation. The fact that they both instantly get caught by the curse user, and it's not even like they get caught, right? Because the curse technique, whatever the curse technique is, it doesn't even do any real damage. It doesn't stop them from doing anything. It doesn't stop them from moving. They just get so confused and distracted by the fact that their eyes turned into anime-esque crazy eyes that they get literally stun-locked, staring at each other, freaking out, and Megami has to pick up the slack for them. Of all the final villains and the final archetypes to make your final villain, it's absolutely insane to say that the final curse user that we fight is literally King of the Incels. So King of the Incels is who bought the bag for the girl, and that's why he was harassing the girl and her boyfriend. I guess he just wanted her boyfriend to be weird and her not be attracted to him anymore. What an interesting development to everything. And in the final moment, you know, he's very sad. He actually understands. You got to give it to him. He understands completely why he's in the wrong. He's like, I'm well past the age where I should know how to communicate. I tried putting all the blame on her, and I was completely wrong. It's so beautiful to know that Yuji is the one that will surpass Gojo in the long run. Not Yuta, not Hikari. Yuji is the person that will follow in Gojo's footsteps, but not completely follow. He's going to walk forward further than Gojo ever made it, which I think is always great. Because Yuji admits that he wanted to switch train with Gojo, but Gojo flat out refuses because he goes, you know what, Yuji? You don't need to copy me. You don't need to become the next Gojo Satoru. We talked a little bit about this earlier, but one major factor that happened, and I know a lot of people don't like the whole Yuta taking over Gojo's body plot point. A lot of people, especially now, think it was useless, but I think the reason for it was Yuta was always prophesized to fill Gojo's shoes. Yuta was always the one that was going to surpass Gojo. He was second to Gojo, and when Gojo dies, he was going to be the next Gojo Satoru. To the point that he literally did become the next Gojo Satoru. Unlike anybody else in the situation, Yuta was the only one who was willing to throw away his humanity. Yuta was the only one that was willing to take the world by the horns and say, fuck you, I'm going to become the monster that Gojo was. I'm the only one that can fill his shoes. And that amounted to absolutely nothing, because not for nothing, Gojo already lost to Sukuna. Gojo's philosophy was not able to reach Sukuna. So why would Yuta copy Gojo's whole flow, whole philosophy and everything and expect to have different results? It doesn't work, right? Whereas Yuji was able to actually beat Sukuna because instead of copying Gojo's philosophy, instead of becoming Gojo Satoru, Yuji envisioned a stronger version of himself, like Megami once did long ago. Yuji became the true successor to Gojo because Yuji was the person that Gojo's talking about here. The person that's able to grow and forget about Gojo because they were able to grow stronger than he could ever imagine, but not in the same way as him, in completely different ways. And because Yuji is able to do that, and he's able to come to his conclusion that all life is valuable, even curses like Sukuna and Mahito, it gives Yuji that edge that allows him to win. Whereas Yuta treading the same ground as Gojo did not end any differently than before. I think that is why we see Yuji, as he tells this curse user, hey, you know what? You're not going to the execution lot. We're not hanging you. Get locked up, do your time, and then come to the Jujutsu High and help us in our everyday lives against cursed spirits. Which, if you remember, is exactly what Gojo said to the curse user all the way back in Hidden Inventory, the curse bag user. We're more than happy to take you as a sorcerer. Don't worry, we'll wipe your slate clean. You've got Higuruma, who literally had his murder charges wiped clean. And I know a lot of people were saying, oh, what is Gege trying to tell us with you can get your murder charges wiped just to be a sorcerer? I don't really think Gege thought too much about the underlying themes of what that would be. And again, I think it has everything to do with morality is very gray. Is Higuruma is Higuruma a bad person because he killed all of those people? Probably. But at the end of the day, Higuruma in some people's eyes redeemed himself for essentially giving his life to potentially fight against and save the world from Sukuna. So you could argue he did his time. You could argue that he redeemed himself. And honestly, sorcerers are short-handed anyway, They need all the help they can get. So if there's a pretty good working sorcerer that literally all they have to do is wipe a murder charge for, they'll do it. They're not afraid to. We've seen it done before. So yeah, it's cute here that Yuji really does show that he will be the next in line, the next Gojo. Just he'll be Yuji Todori, not a Gojo clone. As he says, I'm expecting great things from you. Just like Gojo said to Yuji. I think it's also about the newer generation being given a chance. Yes, which is what Gojo has always been about. At a certain point, they'll have to move on from Satoru Gojo. Yuta would just be another Gojo, which he didn't want. Exactly. How is bro having faith in the next generation when Momo's useless bum exists? Listen, Momo was in the fight with Sukuna. Where were you? Makima's loyal dog. Not in Shinjuku fighting Sukuna. So I would be careful about that. The final moment of Jujutsu Kaisen 271 is the final resolution of Sukuna, which, in my opinion, I very much enjoyed. I know a lot of people were left a little bit confused by it. A lot of people didn't really like it. While you could argue that Yuji throwing away Sukuna's finger and not really worrying too much about it and just putting it back in its spot as a talisman since the very beginning of the story is a little worrisome. And may open up Jujutsu Kaisen Part 2, of all things. But yeah, I think it's pretty set in stone that Sukuna's essence is gone. That one finger does not have enough of a hold on Sukuna's soul to actually bring Sukuna back. It never will. And as we find out in this short conversation between Sukuna and Mahito, Sukuna's never coming back. Sukuna's done. Sukuna is passing on and he has found peace within himself. Exemplified through a Mahito cameo, which I have to say, I love that we see Mahito in this last chapter. Mahito is, if you've been here long enough, you'll know Mahito is my favorite character. My favorite character in the entire series. I love Mahito. No other character, in my opinion, that's better. So seeing him in this last moment is beautiful. Seeing him basically acting as like a herald type character almost. Seeing Sukuna on his way down and asking Sukuna one final question before Sukuna either chooses to go north or go south. And that brings everything back into it, right? You either go north, which is you stay the same, or you go south, which is you become something entirely different. I might have that reversed, but either way, you get what I'm saying, right? Where Mahito, the unruly child that he is, Mahito is unable to move on. Unlike Jogo, unlike Hanami and Dagon, who were able to find peace in death, which we know for sure because we've even seen Jogo find peace after Sukuna killed him. Jogo cried. He accepted that, you know what, I'll be recreated 100 years from now. It's okay. We did our best. Let's leave it up to Mahito. I can feel confident leaving it up to the next generation of curses, unironically. And Jogo, Hanami, and Dagon were left. You know, they passed on. Whereas Mahito, still a young curse spirit that had such a strong sense of self. It's the reason why he was so damn strong. If you think about it, a sense of self is the pure mark of a great sorcerer. That's why Sukuna was able to hold on to his sense of self, cutting himself into 20 pieces and surviving 1,000 years. That's why all these great culling game players were able to reincarnate, everything like that. All about the sense of self, your selfishness. Mahito's is so strong that he can't even move on. His curse technique to the soul also allows him to act as this herald, this Virgil type character, to souls as they pass down. And Mahito's been waiting here for Sukuna, and he says, hey, Sukuna, I wanted to ask you something since I knew you were going to come here. Mahito basically calls Sukuna out and says, you know what, you say you were trying to live according to your own beliefs, but realistically, that was you just exaggerating. You were very mad about no one wanting you. You were very resentful at people tossing you aside and persecuting you as an unwanted wretch. So Sukuna took that hatred out on the world. He said, you know what, if no one wants me, I don't want you guys. Screw the world, I'm killing all of you, right? And Sukuna kind of lived his life like that for a good amount of time. And it's here that we learn something very, very interesting. Sukuna admits something that he probably wouldn't have been able to admit if he never lost. If his philosophy was never beaten by Yuji's. Sukuna would always believe his philosophy was the best way. But now that he's lost, Sukuna has to think for himself once, you know what? Maybe this path that I've went on for so long, my philosophy was defeated by someone else's philosophy. Maybe I need to think different. Maybe I need to potentially look a different way. And it's here that Sukuna remembers, he goes, you know what? I thought that was the only way I could ever live my life. But after being beaten now, I see that there were plenty of different options I had. I could have lived my life as a husband, who I assume is this random woman standing behind him. We had an argument whether or not this was Yorozu. I think if it was Yorozu, the design would be a little bit more obvious. We would have made it very clear that this was Yorozu, but I could be wrong. You know, at this point, it's all headcanon, so believe what you want. But I think this is just some random woman, maybe his mom. Maybe it's a person that taught Sukuna about love. And then we have Orame, who I don't take this as Orame and Sukuna having any kind of relationship. I take this more as Orame and Sukuna having kind of like a father-child relationship, or Sukuna being a mentor. Again, it's all headcanon because we'll never have full clarification on what Orame and Sukuna's relationship truly was and how they even met and how Orame became the only person that Sukuna ever ended up living alongside of him. And maybe in the light novels or data books, we'll get more clarification because that was announced. But I think this relationship is very similar to Zabuza and Haku from Naruto. If you're not familiar, Zabuza and Haku are a very similar dynamic, where Zabuza is a older, wiser, stronger assassin type, evil ninja, seeing a young, tossed aside child that reminds him of himself. In one moment of sincerity, some could argue Zabuza's one and only moment besides the final moment he has in the end, Zabuza says, hey, kid, come live with me. Come be my weapon. Come be my tool. Let me give you a purpose in life. And even though Zabuza wasn't able to see it then, he pitied Haku and cared about Haku. And over time, as much as Zabuza distanced himself from his emotions, at the end, when Haku dies, Zabuza realizes that he did care about Haku all along. And, Haku is also a femboy. So it's just funny to me not funny to me, respect to femboys everywhere. But it's funny to me that you can call that dynamic apart, right? Zabuza and Haku, Sukuna and Orame, Sukuna potentially saw himself in Orame, a wretched, unwanted, cursed child that in a moment of sincerity that Sukuna denied up until this very moment, I did care about you. And you know what? I can take, let's move on and let's grow into different people. Sukuna was unable to accept either of those paths. Instead of, you know, even if you want to say this is Yorozu or whatever, instead of being married and in love, or instead of being a father and giving up on his curses, not only did he curse Yorozu or this woman and curse Orame, he cursed everyone around him because he feared his own curse would immolate himself. The curses inside of him were so strong they would either devour him or he would have to devour others to feed that curse spirit. If Sukuna is to reincarnate, if he is so lucky, because I believe Jujutsu Kaisen focuses on the cycle of life and death as is in Buddhism, where you cycle through multiple different realms before you fully reincarnate as a human again. Sukuna admits that, hey, you know what? If there is a next time, maybe I'll walk a different path. Maybe I'll walk somewhere different. I'm not going to do the exact same thing I just did. I mean, why would I? I lost. Why would I do the exact same thing? And Orame cries a little bit, which is very cute. And as Sukuna and Orame walk off to begin their cycling of souls and pass on to the afterlife and find peace, Mahito cries out in response. Because Mahito and Sukuna were very similar. Even Yuji thinks so, right? Even Yuji literally thinks so. Yuji believes that Mahito and Sukuna were two people who thought lives were playthings. But Mahito and Sukuna weren't too far off from each other. Mahito was almost the next Sukuna. Mahito was almost the you know, Mahito was, you've heard that before. When looking to this person who was very similar to Mahito, Mahito in death and in loss to Yuji was unable to move on. Unable to find peace in his death and holding on to that grudge he has against the world. So when Sukuna dies, he expects Sukuna to have the exact same idea. He expects Sukuna to hold on to his cursed spirit and never allow reincarnation, never change. But he does. And Mahito can't believe that. He goes, "You've gone soft." And Sukuna says, "Yeah, I lost. Why would I hold on to the curse that made me lose? Clearly, there must be a different way." And Mahito, being left alone in what essentially is a limbo, the cursed realm, admits and finally realizes he's the only one left in the entire story who has refused to move on and learn a new path and envision themselves as a different person. And Mahito was doomed to forever roam the cursed realm until he finds peace. And I love getting that closure on Mahito's death. Mahito, again, was one of my favorite characters, so seeing him in the end was great to me. And it also gives a great end to Sukuna, whereas I don't think Sukuna got enough care and love in his death scene with Yuji. I still wish I could have seen a couple more pages of that, but I think this satisfies a little bit more of the Sukuna death that I had in him, to the point where I think, I've said it before, I think, you know, all of these characters got a satisfying ending. Mahito, Sukuna, Gojo, Yuji, everybody got a satisfying ending, except Hikari. Hikari was written out of the story. But you know what didn't get a satisfying ending, in my opinion? The story and the narrative itself. For every character that got a perfect ending and got a neat bow tied on their story, the story of Jujutsu Kaisen itself had a lot of empty plot threads that left unresolved. The military finding out about cursed energy, civilizations and governments around the world finding out about sorcerers and potentially taking advantage of them. The United States invading Japan and stealing Japanese sorcerers. We have the whole idea of the second year is going to save sorcerers from the United States prison system or whatever they're doing. Kenjaku and the merger. We didn't need the merger to happen, but Kenjaku's reasons for doing everything. Kenjaku and Tengen's relationship with Jujutsu sorcery. Where did Jujutsu sorcery even come from? Why did Tengen set up these barriers? How did Sukuna play into Tengen and Kenjaku's relationship? Where are Yuji's parents? What happened to Kaori Itadori? What happened to Jin Itadori? How did Kenjaku find out about Jin's whole twin of Sukuna thing? Why did Kenjaku find it so necessary to birth Yuji Itadori? All of my unsatisfied and unresolved questions mostly lie with Kenjaku, and lie with Kenjaku's ending just being too abrupt, and Kenjaku being the main villain that moved the plot much more than Sukuna did. Sukuna had great dynamics with all the characters, and Sukuna's ending fulfills a lot of the characters' stories. Sukuna's death does not fulfill Jujutsu Kaisen as a whole story. That was Kenjaku's purpose. Kenjaku was the mastermind behind everything, and Kenjaku was tossed to the wayside. I would argue that Jujutsu Kaisen itself was not rushed. I would argue that Gege decided that Kenjaku's entire plot point and character moment was not necessary to finish, and it dropped, and therefore left us with Jujutsu Kaisen's story feeling unfinished. Is Jujutsu Kaisen's ending great? Is this ending a good ending, with all of the characters going off on their own path, Sukuna's finger put back in as a talisman, Sukuna saying goodbye and being able to move on because Itadori Yuji's entire philosophy was able to surpass not only Gojo's but Sukuna's as a whole. Our three characters being able to get back to normal business and get back to the life that everyone asked they would still have back in Juju Strolls. The world is reset like a sitcom. But I think the problem with that is because there are unresolved issues, mostly with Kenjaku. You also have Yaga's three spirit thing and curse with Panda being unresolved somewhat. Yuki's entire philosophy of wanting to extinguish cursed energy and create a world of Tojis could have played into the merger. It all comes back to Kenjaku, and I feel like that's what leaves me unsatisfied. I don't know if any of you guys feel the same way, but I think that is my largest takeaway from this chapter, where I feel happy that all of these characters ended on a good note, and I don't think it was a bad ending by any means. I just think if we got 5 more chapters to focus on Kenjaku, maybe even instead of Yuta immediately decapitating Kenjaku, they fight and Kenjaku explains a lot of these things. You know, in those couple chapters, we got another chapter of how the world is dealing with the existence of cursed spirits, how Japan has recovered from the culling game, because all of that isn't even explored. It leaves a lot to be desired, and I think that's what makes this ending so unsatisfying. Would I say the ending was bad? No. I would say it was lackluster. Definitely a lackluster ending, because I think all of the characters, again, got great endings. I think Gege dropped the ball on the actual narrative and plot relevance of certain aspects of his story. And again, for people that know Gege or have read the data books or have read Gege's interviews or have been part of my streams talking about Gege's data books, you know that Gege has a habit of letting his characters drive the story more than the plot. And Gege has mentioned time and time again that he'll go 10 chapters and not realize that he has completely dropped the purposes of the plot in order to let his characters speak and write for themselves. And as someone that really enjoys character-driven stories, I think that's a great way to write character-driven stories. But you also have to have the plot come in at some point in time. You can't just say that it makes sense for you to decapitate Kenjaku and Kenjaku dies and gives off the merger to Sukuna, and then all of the Kenjaku plot threads from there get dropped because, well, sorry, they killed Kenjaku. I don't know what to tell you. That's just what my story told me to do. No, you have to have some kind of authority over your story because you are the writer. Your characters are not the writers. Yes, your characters can get away from themselves, and yes, you can let your characters drive the plot, but you have to remember that there is a plot, and that is my problem. I don't believe there will be a Jujutsu Kaisen 2. I don't believe there will be a Jujutsu Kaisen sequel. There might be an extra one-shot, there might be light novels and extra stuff to go into the additional content of the story. I personally don't like Gege filling in his plot holes with additional content. I think you should create a full-fleshed story and then add additional content to add more fun stories, or maybe filter in small, I don't think you should fill in plot holes with additional content. I think you should fill in plot holes in your initial story. But yeah, whatever Gege decides to do next, I will be there for sure. I don't care if it's an idle manga. I don't care if it's something completely different. I'll be here for it because Gege has earned my trust as a writer, and I hope he only improves upon himself as he gets better. I don't think any of the issues with Jujutsu Kaisen stem from editors, Gege ignoring his editor. I don't think any of the characters were done a disservice. I don't think any of the characters were assassinated. I don't think any of the characters were written into a corner. I don't think killing Gojo ruined things. I don't think Sukuna being too strong made things too tough. I think ultimately at the end of the day, my problem with the ending of Jujutsu Kaisen all goes to Kenjaku's character, in my opinion, just being fucking dropped. And that's just what it is. I think if Kenjaku's character was not dropped, We got more fully fleshed out development as Kenjaku as a whole, Kenjaku's reasonings for doing what he did, and I think Kenjaku holds the keys for a lot of problems that people have with other characters. So I think that's really what it comes down to. Yeah, I can't believe it's over either. I will say, out of everything, guys, Jujutsu Kaisen is a story that has well earned its mark in my life. I will never forget Jujutsu Kaisen. It has some of the most fun moments ever. It has some of my favorite characters in anime in a long fucking time. And I haven't been this invested in an anime manga series since Bleach and Naruto when I was like 13, 14. And I can honestly say that when I read Naruto and Bleach and when I finished Naruto and Bleach, was I satisfied with those endings? Nah, not really. But my love for the series didn't wane at all, and it remained to this day. To this day,